My name's Helen Cook, and I am on the Australian Nuclear Association's Executive Committee, and I'm going to be moderating this session. And it is my great pleasure to welcome back a returning speaker from last year to this year's session. So we have the Shadow Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Ted O'Brien, here today. He also spoke last year at our conference, and when I introduced Ted last year, I said, isn't it great that we've been hearing some of our politicians dare to utter in a positive way the term nuclear energy? That's a great thing. Well, obviously, in the last 12 months, we've had some developments in this space, and we are hearing more and more about nuclear energy in Australia. And I'm delighted to welcome Ted this morning to hear how your thinking and policy development with the Coalition has advanced over the last 12 months. Ted.
Thank you, Helen. Is this working okay? Well, firstly, can I just say that I feel very privileged to be here again, and I want to acknowledge that Dr. Dave Gillespie, my colleague, is also here with me. I'm also very privileged to be introduced by the extraordinary Helen Cook, whose expertise in this field is seriously second to none. Helen, thank you so much for everything you do. And I think you are one of our greatest international ambassadors. To be here back at, please give Helen a round of applause. No one usually claps my speeches within 30 seconds, so I might just shut up and sit down and call it a win, hey? Look, I'm also just delighted to be back here at ANA, and also Peter Dutton sends his best wishes. And he had hoped that he could be here himself personally, and he does look forward to attending one of these conferences in due course. We've got to think big if we are to face the big issues of our time. That was Bob Hawke who said that. That was Bob Hawke who said we need to think big if we're to face the big issues of our time. Bob Hawke said that at the Woodford Folk Festival in 2016. And I thought I would start with that in a spirit of bipartisanship, if you like, of words of wisdom from a former Labor Prime Minister who spoke those words at a time when he was speaking about the importance of Australia embracing nuclear energy. At some point in the future, Australia will have bipartisanship on nuclear energy as part of a broader, low emissions energy mix in this country. Right now, as we know, that's not the case. That's not the case. I had a few SMSs yesterday, including from people in this room, asking about the news that came from the Parliament yesterday about the establishment of a House Standing Committee on Nuclear Energy. I'm not sure if anybody heard that news by chance. So can I just tell you a little bit about the backstory of that to put it in context, and then a little bit of where I think we need to go. So what is it now, Friday? So that was Thursday. So Wednesday evening, the Leader of the House tabled a motion which sort of goes to the clerks and so forth in the Parliament. So yesterday morning we woke up, arrived at the Parliament to see a motion was going to be put to establish a committee, parliamentary committee, to look into nuclear energy. And then the government decided that it would bring that a debate on for that motion in the first session of the morning. So giving very little time, sort of springing it by surprise, all those sort of usual parliamentary tricks, right? In looking through the terms of reference and the governance, it was hard not to be a little bit suspicious, not just because there had been zero engagement on this, and it has taken about 2.5 years for the Albanese government to have any serious engagement on the topic of nuclear energy. I was somewhat suspicious. I therefore went into the Parliament with a series of amendments, and the amendments to their motion to establish this Nuclear Energy Committee really fell into two parts. One was the balance of power on the committee. So what Labor has established with this committee, they are proposing that they would have twice as many members on the committee than the coalition would have. So every decision of the committee, Labor would outvote the coalition 2-1, assuming they vote as a pack. Now, this was not right. So one of the amendments we put up was to have that balanced, equal number of coalition and Labor. There was to be one crossbench member. That crossbench member was not to be decided, as in who it would be, by the crossbench themselves. Now, you might guess how I feel about the Greens and the Teals, but in fairness, I mean, seriously, they can decide for themselves who represents them, surely, right? The Greens, the Teals and the Coalition sat together against the Labor Party in the House, wanting to bring some fairness of balance to that committee. Labor had the numbers, we lost. The first meeting last night, of course, Labor has twice as many members as the Coalition. The second issue I had problems with that formed part of the amendments was the scope of this inquiry. So committee established, there's terms of reference for the inquiry of what it has to look into. Labor only wants the Nuclear Energy Committee to look at small modular reactors. They refused in the Parliament to add, as we had requested, also consideration for modern, larger plants. Their terms of reference had sort of this cursory reference to affordability, but it didn't really cover affordability, certainly not from a total system cost perspective. It was silent on the importance of reliability and silent on the importance of emissions reduction. We suggested that should be included, at least in the terms of reference. Labor voted against that. Reliability will not be considered, according to Labor, and nor will emissions reduction. Suggested energy security should be added to the terms of reference. Nope, they voted against that too. Suggested that we should be looking at leveraging our existing institutional architecture and capabilities from ANSTO, ASNO, AWA and the like, right? No. Rejected. That is not to be considered in the terms of reference. Suggested that at least we should be looking at the impact on the local environment. No. We should be looking at the impact of regional communities. No. We should be looking at the impact of coal communities with a coal to nuclear transition. No. No. Where there is costings done and considered by this inquiry, it should at least compare a balanced energy mix, including nuclear, to the Australian Energy Market Operator's integrated system plan scenarios through to 2050. Those scenarios, the Prime Minister has waived that ISP document in the Parliament and said, this is our plan. So surely we should at least compare the full total system cost of one party's plan to the inclusion of nuclear energy. No. Last night, at about 20 to 5, my office hurriedly came and interrupted meetings I had to say, suddenly the committee's meeting. No correspondence, no advice notice, no sending out of agendas. So I had to cancel things, apologise to people, cancel another meeting, and go and find the committee room as Labor members sat there. Even the Teal representative was at the airport so that they could trigger the committee, elect the chair, and get going. And so I share that with you very candidly because I think the Albanese government is desperate. I think they are worried. And they are very clearly trying to weaponise the parliamentary system to kill the idea that Australia should include nuclear energy as part of its mix. What did David and I and our colleagues do in the Parliament once we lost all those votes? We voted in support of the committee being established because we will not vacate the field. We will turn up and we will debate. The only ask that I put and issued a media release to this end was, okay, Labor's used its numbers, it's established a committee. My ask is that Chris Bowen chairs that committee and I will dutifully serve as deputy chair. And let us sit together in every public hearing and thrash this out. Let's have multiple hearings around the country and Chris and I can sit together as the sitting and the alternate energy minister and listen to the evidence and ask the questions and let's get to the bottom of it. That offer has been declined. Now, with all of that said, can I assure you that we have every intention to make sure that we are coming to the table on this. And for those in this room who wish to make a submission, submissions haven't opened yet, they will, please do. And do not be constrained by the terms of reference set by the Labor Party. In all committees, you always have that final bullet point that goes along the lines of, other relevant information. There's a lot of other relevant information. And so please, my ask today is that you do engage as much as you can so that we can thrash out these issues. Because all we ask, thank you, all we are asking is to have a fair and reasonable conversation. That's what we've always been asking for over 2.5 years now. And if you think of how far this debate has come over 2.5 years, it's quite extraordinary in Australia. And so much as I pay credit to Peter Dutton's leadership, this is not about the coalition. This is about Australia. Yes, it takes political leadership and will to put it on the agenda and take it up. But it is people in this room and beyond who have been doing the heavy lifting for years. It is the intellectual capacity of people in this room and the willingness to be patriots, to put Australia first. This isn't about the coalition. And I know it's a debate being held in the context of politics and there's going to be an election. And yes, as it turns out, it's a partisan fight. And like many big fights in Australia, in order to get to bipartisanship, sometimes you need a partisan fight. But it is very much a Team Australia effort of patriots who are prepared to engage and assist along the way. And there's a lot of people in this room who have really been doing that. And for that, can I just say how grateful I am. So thank you. And please, please keep doing it. Did anybody see Four Corners this week? So I saw a few little shivers there. I mean, it's not just the Labor Party, right? So, you know, as somebody who has been on many ABC programs, candidly, that Four Corners program could have been a lot worse. It could have been, but it was so biased, right? It was just so biased, and you know, the idea that the ABC decides they're going to truly explore the international best thinking of on nuclear energy, and that's the extent of their coverage. I mean, seriously, it's pretty shallow stuff. And it did make me reflect, though, on how fortunate we have been to learn from not just people in this room, but people overseas. And if I think of the key principles that have driven our thinking as a coalition, they've been lessons learnt predominantly from other marketplaces with help from people in this room. I mean, there's a reason we had principles such as only looking at next of a kind, not first of a kind. Those are learning key lessons. The importance of having a multi-unit site program. Well, lessons learnt from overseas. The importance of getting the design fully right before you mobilise for construction. Lessons learnt from overseas. The value in leveraging former coal plant sites in terms of the impact, that the leveraging of infrastructure, the potential to lower owners' costs and so forth. Lessons learnt from overseas. The importance of best-in-class, world-best consortia to do the job while also having a foot in tomorrow and planning for localising capability. Again, lessons learnt from overseas. The importance of trust, basic trust, and therefore being transparent with those you serve, the public. Again, lessons learnt from overseas. It's why we've been transparent from the get-go about what it is we're trying to do. The importance of putting the host community at the centre of your planning and making sure that host communities understand the value proposition of hosting a modern plant. Lessons learnt from overseas. The importance of getting the right approach to regulation, understanding the value of our existing regulatory architecture in Australia for nuclear and how it can be leveraged. Learnt the importance of that and Australia's reputation from overseas. How to deal with waste management, security, safety, lessons learnt from overseas. The importance of the IAEA's milestone approach. Lessons learnt from countries who have been doing it and following it overseas. The capacity of nations to work together throughout the supply chain, lessons learnt from overseas. How the world considers the importance of Australia as part of the future supply chain, given our abundance of uranium, lessons learnt from overseas. The potential for us as a part of a long-term endeavour, not in the short term, but long-term endeavour to build capabilities across the front end of the fuel cycle. Again, lessons learnt from overseas. Is it any wonder that those who think Australia should not consider nuclear energy are the very ones who refuse to learn lessons from overseas? Those who believe Australia shouldn't have nuclear as part of a balanced energy mix are the ones who are promoting a pathway for Australia that has never dared been contemplated by any country in the world. We are completely isolated. And all we are seeking to do is to demonstrate the humility of learning from those who know more than we do and putting it in the Australian context. The importance of how you look at everything from doing your calculations of the costing of a mix, a total system costing, through to system planning, design, the importance of the market structure. Right now, we are going down a very dangerous pathway because I fear the pathway we are going down at the moment, which we call an all eggs in one basket renewables only approach, is based on a dream that is now turning into a nightmare and is not based on any research and genuine humility in learning the lessons from overseas. And all I've done now is just lay out some of the principles that have driven our thinking. There are far more. And I want to end with this in just saying again a very big thank you. In saying that when Bob Hawke stood in front of the Woodford Folk Festival and said, we've got to think big if we're to face the big issues of our time. The one word in all of that I take away from our former Prime Minister's speech was the word face. Because it wasn't think, you've got to think big as we face. It was a forward posture. There's nothing cowardly about that. There was no, let's wait and see. It was an ambition for our country and our future from a Labor Prime Minister who was spot on. And the people in this room who are true patriots and so many others around the country are prepared to proactively face the challenge of our time. And we do so knowing that there's no silver bullet in any technology. But if we can embrace zero emissions nuclear energy as part of a balanced energy mix, then we will have a pathway for the future of Australia to be a nation which is rich, which is strong and fiercely independent. And that's our vision, and we're going to keep prosecuting the case for however long it takes. Thank you very much.